Navigating Innovation and Leadership, a conversation with Sean Bannon, CEO of Ska Fabricating. The Metal Pack Pod is brought to you by The Metal Packager, the #1 digital resource for the global metal packaging market, and PPG Packaging Coatings, a global leader in innovative, safe and reliable coatings. In today's episode, we interview Sean Bannon, Ska Fabricating's new CEO, on packaging automation, talent development and market trends. Alex Fordham interviews Sean, discussing his decade-long progression from engineer to CEO and his support for a customer close organisation. Sean describes how an engineering mindset shapes his problem-solving approach and Ska's culture of creativity across teams, and explains efforts to address the labour gap through challenging work, engagement and intentional knowledge transfer. He explains how customer demand is centred on flexibility and future-proofing capital equipment, including handling varied containers and pallet specifications. Ska is seeing strong activity in retrofits and line optimisations to reduce labour, although there is still market hesitancy around new capacity expansion. Sean concludes with new Ska innovation and market commentary on the evolving craft beer market into broader craft beverage trends. As always, please like and share our podcast. Enjoy the show. Good afternoon, Sean, or I suppose I should say morning to you, the other side of the pond. Yeah, looking forward to an interesting conversation about the latest developments of Ska and obviously your recent appointment as CEO. So first off, congratulations and looking forward to a good chat.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. Yeah, good afternoon. Glad to be here.
During my research, I see you've been at Ska now for well over a decade, so you must have seen some good changes at the company. So that's probably a nice place to begin, the transition at the company.
I've had the pleasure of working at Ska Fab now for, as you mentioned, a decade. I started in an engineering role and worked my way through the engineering organization and really saw an opportunity to jump in and assist on the operations side of our business as well as we continued to grow, and continued on that journey, taking on then really using my experience on the engineering and the ops side to assist with our sales efforts in the role of president and ultimately CEO. And I think more recently that transition to CEO was just perfectly timed. Really, I think I have felt so fortunate to have that experience behind me and to really have been a part of the development and growth over the years at Ska Fab to help shape the strategy moving forward.
Has it been plain sailing so far? Has it been what you've expected, stepping into the chair of CEO, or has it been totally different to what you expected? Yeah, just interested to deep dive a little bit more behind the scenes.
Yeah. Again, I've been very fortunate in that it's been this glide path into this position with some great former leadership to help along the way in that journey. So certainly as expected, given the transition plan that we had been on. Certainly over the broader history through Ska over the past 10 years, I would say there's absolutely been surprises along the way, but expect that's true for most in the business in the last 10 years.
Absolutely. And I noted that your predecessor mentioned that Ska was looking to integrate more towards a flatter, more integrated organization. Is that something that you subscribe to as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Guard nimbleness is one of our strengths, and that means making sure that we keep our teams close to our customers. So certainly expect that we continue that moving forward with a particularly flat organization.
Okay, that's great. And then just in terms of finding a little bit more about yourself before we get on to innovation at Ska and some trends we're seeing, just to find a little bit more about the man himself, is just a bit of your background, your interests outside of the business sphere.
I guess anyone that engages with me these days in the business, I think probably guesses the engineering roots before I reveal it myself. It really drives who we are at Ska. And so you see those fingerprints throughout the business. Very fortunate to call Colorado home and love a lot of what comes with getting to call Colorado home, and enjoy spending time outside in any season, whether it's currently in the winter, although it doesn't feel much like the winter here in Colorado this year.
You mentioned there engineer at heart. Is that when I regularly speak to the kind of high level business professionals, that they always have that kind of first love, so to speak, in the business sphere. Is that a frustration that you'd like to maybe get to do the engineering side a little bit more?
No, what I've learned is that of engineering and the engineering education as just developing problem solving skills. And I think at the core, engineers like be problem solvers. And as you just mentioned, whether it's logistics or supply chain or our growth strategy, it's a problem that can benefit from that problem solving approach that I think an engineering background just prepares anyone for. Obviously, I've made it known that I'm partial, but I've seen engineers be hyper successful in a variety of those roles just because of that approach, that joy in problem solving, and I use it every day when talking to customers. It really just comes down to listening first and understanding why we're here, why we're talking about it, what's the problem that we're trying to solve. And I think it's a hyper effective way to approach any problem, our business, but certainly our interactions with our customers as well.
Certainly sounds like a nice fit for Scar, that kind of critical thinking approach, particularly in the new age of doing business. So I think there's a few topics I'd like to get your expertise on just before we get on to the new innovations and trends we're seeing at Scar. But a couple of topics I really want to ask your opinion on as a young CEO, so to speak. I think the labour gap is a particularly important issue in terms of getting, and particularly as an engineer by trade, getting the next generation of engineers and skilled professionals into the market force, not least in the metal packaging sphere. That the metal packaging is our bread and butter. And do you see the industry as a whole at the moment? Do you think we're in a good place now? I know we've been at shows for the last few years and it's been a popular topic, but do you think the industry is now well placed? And also, Scar, what you're doing to get the next generation of professionals into the business, and also to retain them, because young people tend to move jobs every couple of years, and with the various issues that the industries have. Is that something that you guys are mindful?
We have members of our team who have been doing this for decades, and there's certainly an acknowledgement and a realization that they picked up a lot of knowledge along the way that's just critical to our business, but critical to the industry as well. And so we work very consciously to ensure that knowledge, we structure our teams to transfer that knowledge across our organization, because that day will come when some of the team are ready to call it a day and spend a little bit less time in the shop and in the office. And without that intentional approach, could certainly lose some of that knowledge that they've spent decades to develop. In terms of how we attract talent and keep talent interested across our organization, we expect a lot of our team. Like, we are not afraid to give them challenges. And I find that it creates a level of engagement that's difficult to recreate in any other way. We've had a little engineering theme so far in the discussion. And so just to continue that, it wouldn't be uncommon for a junior engineer to be given a task that they might not be exposed to elsewhere. In my experience with other organizations, you might come in and you start with maybe some documentation work, and you have to earn your stripes to get up to maybe what's more exciting for you over time. And while there's always some of that work, don't get me wrong, we try to also ensure that there's open-ended questions and that there's challenges that keep our team excited and engaged by getting to be creative. And we typically find that's a trait that drove a lot of the team into engineering and into our business. And as long as we're able to give them that creative outlet, it really captures their attention and their interest.
I think I picked up on a couple of things you said there, and I think being creative from outside of looking in, that seems to resonate throughout the Scar brand, even down to the logo, the website, that modernization. It doesn't feel that stuffy engineer feel. It's not that the creativity side's lost, whereas actually Scar, it seems to be the other way around. It looks like a more modern place where young people will think, actually, that looks like a really cool brand I want to be a part of. So that seems to resonate throughout the brand.
Some of our most impactful innovations too, They don't all come from the engineering team. Some of those ideas come from production and come from assembly and come from our field service team that see it firsthand and think there's got to be a better way or have an idea. Culture in our organization is certainly such that those ideas are encouraged and can really lead to great things. And everybody wants to feel heard.
We interrupt this episode for a brief segment from our sponsors, PPG.
Packaging coatings from PPG draw on our company's 140-year history of innovation. We never stop improving our solutions to meet the evolving needs of can makers and the marketplace. That spirit of innovation results in technology like the cradle-to-cradle platinum-rated PPG Innovel Pro. PPG Innovel Pro is the latest enhancement to the world's #1 non-BPA beverage can coating. It still doesn't use any bisphenol ingredients, but experienced can makers report that it now sprays like an epoxy. Follow PPG Packaging Coatings on LinkedIn or visit packagingcoatings.com to learn more about why PPG is the coatings partner for can making excellence.
And the other thing I picked up there is you mentioned about knowledge transfer. Can you just expand on that? Because I think that's an issue that the industry has in general, is that you get people with so much knowledge, but when they tend to come to retirement age, whether they pass that knowledge on to the next generation of professionals just sometimes can be human nature. Unless people are asked, they don't pass that knowledge on. So how are you navigating that as a concept?
Yeah. The obvious outlets are the documentation and formalized training that seek to capture in a written or recorded format that can be distributed through the team. What do we do when we are faced with a particular challenge or a particular application? It's difficult to take that 40, 50-year career and try to condense that into something that is easily digestible and reasonable to parcel out and transfer to the rest of the team. We try to pair new assembly workers with our most seasoned veterans because there can be just a great relationship built there. And it's all that stuff that happens on the periphery as well that can add value, not just the, hey, did we capture it in an SOP and make sure that we saved it for later?
Yes, I suppose it's having that. So in some organisations where it's like that, them and us, different generations. Yeah,
For sure.
the older generations sticking together, and then the younger generations trying to foster that community spirit as an organisation. So I know it sounds like you're on the right tracks. Just we're gonna get onto the product side of things, but I noted earlier that you mentioned about for you, everything starts with listening, and so I'm just intrigued where the industry is at the moment in terms of your customers. What are your customers demanding of Ska? And also, what are your customers saying to you in terms of the industry, whether it's in a good place or not? Those two key things I'm interested to learn about in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the demands from the industry, to start there, we hear a lot about the desire for flexibility and scaling. I think I would boil that down to trying to future proof that investment as much as possible anytime that capital equipment is being contemplated. So what that looks like is just being able to provide assurance about being able to run a variety of containers in the future, because who knows where their business might be headed. That is particularly true in the contract manufacturing space. So we see it in particular with our equipment on both ends of the equipment, in what we are feeding into the line, the containers that we're handling, but also on the inputs side as well, with needing or hearing a desire to have pallet size and pallet configuration, pallet specification flexibility, so that they know in the future if they need to change suppliers, win or lose contracts, that there's flexibility. And it also gives them tools to go out and chase new business, to be creative about how they differentiate themselves against their competitors in the market. A lot of focus on flexibility.
Absolutely. And just in terms of customers, the vibe they're getting about the state of play within the industry, are they optimistic? I know we're talking ourselves, the metal packagers, the metal packaging can making industry, but perhaps for the purposes of this conversation, the packaging sector per se, your customers.
I would say we hear a lot of uncertainty. Where we are currently seeing the most success, or where we're placing the most equipment, is on retrofits to existing lines. So optimizations of existing packaging lines, reducing labor on the line. But we are seeing some hesitancy on expansions via new line additions or capacity increases to existing lines, wanting to see a little more certainty, which I think we would all love to see in what the future looks like, and trying to balance the the mixed signals and factors about the state of the economy, what we might expect to see over the next few quarters or years.
Absolutely. I think we're in that state of play at the moment, aren't we? Where that hesitancy filters down the supply chain. And yeah, I think we're all eager for a bit of certainty moving forward.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So yeah, I just want to move on now. It's certainly a busy year for us, the metal packager, but not least Ska Fab with some important trade shows coming up. So is there anything in terms of new product innovations that the industry can look forward to?
Yeah. We've put a lot of focus. I mentioned earlier about flexibility, and it's flexibility has long been a key focal point for us in any product development. Historically, that's been on the product output side, on the container handling side, wanting to make sure that our equipment is able to handle a very broad spectrum of containers, feeding them onto the line reliably. But we've put some additional focus into ensuring that we can accommodate a broader range of pallet specifications with our equipment. So on some of our flagship machines like the CIB depalletizer, we've just recently added that multi-pallet size compatibility. And on our FAR bulk palletizer, that multi-pallet size compatibility. It really helps our customers in two ways, making or giving them that supply chain flexibility so they can go now source from a broader array of potential outlets, that with the machine being able to accommodate a broader specification of input pallets. And then for our bulk palletizing customers, allowing them to be more responsive to their customer needs and create a pallet that matches a broader range of potential specifications that might fit their business. Specifically, the biggest variable there is the pallet size. And while there's a fair amount of standardization in the North American market, outside of North America, rest of world, particularly in Europe, we do see a wide range of commonly available and commonly requested pallet sizes, and we're just looking to be responsive to that fact.
So it seems a case of optimization seems to be a key theme throughout the market. Is that something that you guys are subscribing to then as a result?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, on the one hand, while we're looking to add these capabilities to be able to handle multiple pallet sizes and to be able to handle a broad array of container, it's also important that we make them modular and retrofittable when possible. Because when we talk about optimization, we also don't want to overcomplicate or require features that aren't relevant or required on a particular project by saying, now you must have this. So it's kind of in our DNA here that, again, we listen and then we provide the right solution with the right level of automation for what our customers need now, but also what they think they might need in the future.
That's great. There was, yeah, looking at your website, and obviously you're best known for the palletizers, but I was really surprised at the scale of your production now in terms of different products that you offer, service support. So it seems like as a company in the last few years, you've really grown. So I'm just interested to, I know we touched upon it in the introduction, but as a company, how you've evolved over the past few years, and also now as CEO, how you see the next few years.
Yeah. So I see our roots in the craft beverage industry as one of our greatest strengths. The craft beverage industry really helped to push automation in ways that people didn't expect 10 years ago. Small producers needed equipment that was flexible, reliable, and easy to operate. And I think it really forced manufacturers to rethink how they were approaching equipment, particularly with those small producers in mind. So I would say over the past 10 years, we've taken our approach and we've expanded it outside of the craft beverage market, knowing that there are those same producers, large and small, but who have a variety of needs and a variety of packaging lines that run the full spectrum from those slower, smaller, all the way up to those higher speed systems. But they need a solution that matches that same spectrum instead of here's the offering that we have. It can certainly work for your existing kind of traditional highest speed lines, but sure, it could do these smaller things too. It just might not be optimized for them. We took that model from the craft beer space and then have applied it to other markets, CPG, petroleum packaging, and have found a really strong response there. When you mentioned trade shows, which are just such a great opportunity to engage with the market, and it's so common to have that conversation in the booth that says, I'm too small, our space is too small, our line runs too slow, our we don't have sufficient budget. That kind of it creates this idea that now's not the right time for automation, that there's the idea that automation only applies to the big guys or to some point in the future that we're not currently at. Our team works hard every day to break that misconception and to provide solutions that can work today so that we can help people grow their businesses. I think seeing the success of adopting that model outside of the beverage space and taking that expertise that we developed in the beverage space and extending it into new markets, I'm certain that's what the next 10 years looks like for us as well.
That is interesting. I think you mentioned about the craft beverage space. I just wanted to touch upon that industry as well, because that's going through a state of flux, really, in terms of, I know, consumption habits declining and how the craft industry is having to diversify as a result. So I'm just interested in your general feel of the craft space and how that also applies to other sectors that you've been operating in. It's always good to compare one sector with another. And I suppose the fact that you're in multiple different sectors now gives you the opportunity to learn more about how different industries, and you can apply different logic to different sectors.
Yeah, certainly fair to say that I think the craft beer market in particular has been going through a difficult time recently, quite soft, but uh, it's a it's an awful innovative group that was is really a part of the craft beer story. And it's interesting to see now that response to softness in the market and in seeing brands shift away from that idea of craft being a craft brewery to being a craft beverage brand. And it's an incredibly dynamic space right now. You see all sorts of new and innovative beverages that I don't think anyone anticipated might be in the mix a few years ago, given the capacity in the craft beer space currently. So you see a lot of folks deploying that volume that maybe was originally for their craft beer products and repositioning it for this kind of broader craft beverage market.
But just in terms of innovations you've seen, is there anything that sticks to mind?
A big one for us as we see this kind of surge of new beverage types that are entering the market is again returning to that idea that our customers are in need of solutions that are the right size for their business. And I think a lot of times what gets the most attention, the press releases, you go to the trade shows and you like the fanciest, most automated, highest speed, the flashiest things. But sometimes what's important are the basics. And we have some products where we went the other direction and kind of stripped out some automation so that we have semi-automated equipment that allows some of those new entrants into the market to still have the tools that they need to scale up and to bring a new product to market with a depalletizer, for example, that's right sized for them.
Just the last point from me before we finish in terms of vision for the future for the next few years. What's your key aim for the company moving forward from a professional and also a personal level as well?
Yeah. I think it's important for me that Ska Fabricating continues to be seen as a resource for accessible packaging automation that scales, but that message applies across industry. We're very proud of our roots in beverage, but we're also proud of how we apply that expertise and that knowledge to all of the other markets that we serve. So that, I guess, will receive a lot of focus, and it just is a part of our story and our strategy moving forward.
That's brilliant stuff. And no doubt the company is in safe hands. Yeah, I look forward to checking in again, perhaps in a few months' time to see how things develop.
Thank you so much, Alex.